last year, I've been diving into different fabric manipulation techniques, and in this video, I want to share 5 of the most impressive fabric manipulation techniques I've tried, and I'm going to rate them based on their difficulty, applicability, and beauty. Now, beauty is going to be very subjective, but I'm going to give you my thoughts on each of these fabric manipulation techniques. So let's begin with the very first technique that I tried exactly a year ago, and it's Shibori bubble technique. Now, this technique does come with a few alternative names. However, the principle is the same. We take fabric that has thermal plasticity, so either a synthetic fabric or fabric like silk that changes shape based on the heat and moisture, and then by using steam or boiling, we transform it into a completely different look. So for example, the very first sample that I created was made using faux leather, which is a synthetic material. It does have thermal plasticity. So I took different size beads and I wrapped each bead into the fabric, really tightly wrapping the fabric around each bead and tying a very strong thread. Now, after that is done, I went ahead and using my professional steam iron, I steamed the sample for over 10 minutes. Now, the sample wasn't big, it was about this size, but I steamed it for a very long time. After steaming, I folded everything together, waited until it cooled down, took out the threads, took out the beads, and what was left was the very interesting shape. And now, instead of the flat surface of the faux leather, I have created this bubbly effect. Now, rating the difficulty of this technique, I would have to say that it does need quite a bit of strength if you are planning on using it with a thick fabric like I was using it with faux leather. So I needed quite a lot of strength to tightly wrap each bead into the fabric. Now, if I was using this with very lightweight fabric, very flexible fabric, that would have been much easier. So for me to tie that one sample took over 1 hour and a half, and after 1 hour of very tightly wrapping each bead into the faux leather, my hands were really sore. And now also, to create this technique, you either need to boil the fabric. I haven't tried personally boiling, so I cannot tell you if you can do this with every fabric, but I chose to do the steaming because you need the moisture and the heat to mold the fabric into the shape you want to create. So for me personally, this was an easy step because I do have a steam iron that is able to dispose a large amount of steam continuously. The boiler size on my iron is 1.5 liters, so I do have lots of steam that I was able to use when I was steaming this sample. Now, I also needed beads for this technique, but if you don't have beads, you can use like bottle caps instead of the beads and use them instead, or anything where you can wrap into the fabric tightly so that you can mold into that shape. So if you're able to boil the fabric instead of steaming, you don't need to have any expensive equipment. So on the difficulty level, I'm going to rate it 6 out of 10. You don't need to have special equipment, but it's going to take time even for a very small sample. Now, as for the applicability, this is where things get tricky because this fabric manipulation technique really needs a special project where to apply it to. So when I made it from the faux leather, I cut the sample into different shapes and applied it on the winter sweatshirt that I was creating. It went together with my sweater really nice. I did love the final result, and I wore this the entire winter last year. This was my favorite sweatshirt last year, and the bubbles did hold their shape. But other than that, unfortunately, over the last year, I didn't think of any new project where I could apply it. I actually did find a new project. I was going to make a t-shirt using this technique. Like, I was going to pair it with the pants that I had, like make it in matching color. But when I made this technique, I just did not look really good, so I did skip it. And this is the trick with this technique, that it does need a very purposely selected project where you can apply it. So from applicability, I'm going to rate it 5 out of 10. If you have a project that's going to go well with this technique, it's going to give that very beautiful effect. But on the same side, it can very easily go sideways, which happened with my t-shirt. And on the beauty scale, I'm going to rate it 9 out of 10. Even if I don't have lots of projects where to apply this technique to, it is still such a breathtaking, gorgeous technique to look at. And literally when I made the very first sample, I just sat down and stared at this technique and the texture that it created, because it's just such a beautiful, interesting look. So even if you don't have a project where you want to apply this, I would recommend giving it a try. You will see how fun it is to make, how mesmerizing the finished result looks, and it definitely very fun to make. So this next technique is the embossing on velvet using rubber stamp. So this is as easy as it sounds. You take a rubber stamp, you wet it, you put it on the velvet, the synthetic velvet fabric, you give it steam, and after a while you take out the rubber stamp and you have left the embossing on the velvet. Yes, it is as easy as it looks. So from the difficulty level, I'm going to give it a 2. All you need is a suitable stamp that's not going to melt after a little bit of heat. I think I was using silicone stamps that don't have any glue underneath, because the glue would melt from the heat. And also you need to use the right fabric, that it has those synthetic hairs that after using heat and moisture, they will take the stamp shape. So on the difficulty, 2 out of 10. Anyone can do it. Now, from the applicability point, I personally don't wear a lot of velvet, so that is the issue for me. Now, if I was wearing lots of garments made from velvet fabric, I would be using this technique on every single project, but unfortunately, I just simply don't particularly like wearing this fabric. I don't use it that much. So from applicability point, simply because I don't really wear a lot of velvet garments, I'm going to rate it 5 out of 10. But that is my very subjective rating, and if you wear a lot of velvet garments, you're probably going to rate this technique much higher. Now, when we're talking about beauty, 10 out of 10. This is such a beautiful, gorgeous technique. The camera does not give it full justice. It's not able to capture this entire beauty, but really, if you have a stamp, if you have even a tiny piece of velvet, give it a try. You will see what a magnificent technique it is. And even if you are not wearing velvet garments, maybe you can think like a small project where you can do it. We're moving into the holiday season. Maybe you want to create an ornament from velvet, and using the rubber stamp technique, you will be able to add nice embossing to the velvet that you're going to use for those ornaments. Now, this next technique is called slashing. The slashing is very simple. We layer several different layers of fabrics. It's best if they are different colors of fabrics. Then we draw a geometric print, not necessarily geometric, but I did use the geometric print here. And so you draw the lines, you sew them with a sewing machine, and then you cut through different layers, sew them together into different directions, and then you create this magnificent, beautiful effect. Now, from the difficulty, this technique is very simple to make, but you will need quite a bit of patience and quite a bit of accuracy, because for me personally, the biggest issue when cutting through all those layers, now because I used the t-shirt material, I accidentally cut into some layers that I wasn't planning on cutting. So that is definitely something you need to be aware when slashing through those different layers. Other than that, it's just lots of seams on sewing machine, lots of straight seams on sewing machine. So the difficulty is really easy, and I would rate it 4 out of 10. I am increasing a little bit the difficulty simply because you need to think about the pattern that you want to create and to think about it in advance, to plan it in advance. And because of that, the rating is 4 out of 10. But other than that, really simple technique to make. Now, from applicability, honestly, the most applicable technique that I'm going to show you today, because you can use it on t-shirts, sweatshirts, sweaters, coats. You can use it on anything, on any fabric that you want to create, and on different fabrics, on different materials. This is going to give a very different effect. This technique is a very simple way how you can add that wow effect to your garment. So from applicability, I'm going to give it 9 out of 10. Very practical technique to know and have in your sewing skill set. Now, from the beauty point of view, I am going to rate it 8 out of 10. Now, this is going to, of course, depend on the fabrics that you're going to use and what kind of pattern for sewing and slashing you're going to choose. This is going to affect the final result. Personally, I loved how it turned out. It really gave that wow effect, and it gave it such a good effect that nobody believed that I made it myself, and nobody thought that I made this entire t-shirt myself and didn't just go to the store and buy it. So really gorgeous technique, beautiful technique. Does take a little bit of time and patience, but I think it is really worth giving a try. So this next fabric manipulation technique is where we take fabric that has a little bit of stretch and we give it a puffy effect. So in this technique, as a top layer of the fabric, we're going to use a knit fabric that has quite a bit of stretch. Underneath, we're going to take a batting piece, and the higher the batting, the thicker the batting, the more puffy effect we're going to create. Then we're going to cut the shape we want to make from the batting and then put it on the wrong side of the fabric and then secure it with a piece of fusible interfacing and just pressing all around the batting edges. Then from the wrong side of the fabric, we're going to sew around the batting piece, and on the right side of the fabric, the interfacing and the batting just pushes that puffiness into the stretchy knit fabric, giving it a very beautiful look. Now, this technique does have different variations. It does have alternative names. I think that one of the names is trapunta fabric manipulation technique. I am going to try a different alternative method, and I'm going to share it on my Instagram, so make sure to follow if you're interested to see the alternative version of this technique. Now, from the difficulty level, this technique is very simple to make. Very simple to make. All you need to do, essentially, be able to sew around the shape that you want to make. So if you feel comfortable with your sewing machine, and even if you're a beginner with your sewing machine, I do think you are able to do this technique. So I'm going to rate it 2 out of 10 in difficulty scale. Now, applicability, this is again going to be one of the most applicable fabric manipulation techniques that I'm going to share in today's video, because you can use it on sweatshirts, t-shirts, and really give it very nice personalized touch. Now, in this case, I use the hearts to create that puffy effect, but you can really get creative. You can do like names or words on the t-shirt or sweatshirt. You can create different designs, different geometric patterns. Really get creative and let your imagination flow. So from applicability, 9 out of 10. And now from the beauty, my own subjective rating is going to be 9 out of 10. I love this effect. I especially loved on the fabric that I chose, and when I matched the thread with the fabric that I was using, it kind of made it look as if those hearts are appearing out of nowhere, and it really gives a very subtle but very, very beautiful touch. And the final technique I'm going to share in this video is actually the latest technique that I shared on my Instagram page, and it's how to create this 3D texture inspired by the Joker movie. So this technique is very simple. We're going to use the twin needle, we're going to increase the tension to max, and we're going to reduce the stitch length. When we do that and we sew a seam with the twin needle, we create a very noticeable bump between the two needles. So first, on the right side of the fabric, I draw the lines that I want to stitch. I wanted to create this kind of honeycomb effect, and then after I made stitch adjustments, after I installed the twin needle, threaded with 2 threads, I just went ahead and sew through all the seams from the right side of the fabric. And this is it. I have created this 3D pin tuck effect. Now, to create pin tucks, there are lots of variations. For me personally, this is one of the easiest methods how to create the pin tucks. Very, very simple, very, very fast. Now, the downside is that this technique, in particular this pin tuck technique, works only with drapey and medium on to lightweight fabrics. It won't work on heavyweight, stiff fabrics. And if you want to create the penta effect on those fabrics, heavyweight and stiff fabrics, you're going to need a different technique. Now on the difficulty level, I am going to rate it 4 out of 10. It is very simple. All you need to do is know how to sew a straight line, but I do know that twin needle does give headaches sometimes to sew this. I have a video showing how to work with twin needles so it works smoothly and trouble-free, but I do know that sometimes that might be an issue. Other than that, very simple, beautiful technique. I'm going to increase a little bit the difficulty simply because you need special fabric that is drapey, that is light or medium weight. Otherwise, really simple technique to create. Now from applicability, I actually have tried this technique quite a few times in the past few years, and I do find projects where to apply this to, but the placement of this detail has to be very well thought through. So from applicability, I'm going to rate it 7 out of 10. You definitely can find projects where to apply this to, not only the garments, but also maybe you're making a bag, maybe you're making a quilt project, something like that. You want to add the dimension, you want to add something 3D texture. This is really a good technique to try. And now from the beauty standpoint, the beauty really depends on the fabric. Now this particular fabric, it has this very subtle sheen, and when this technique is applied, really beautiful look. So from the beauty side, I'm going to rate it 8 out of 10. It really looks beautiful, especially in real life, and I really enjoy how it looks. So here are all the fabric manipulation techniques and the ratings that I wanted to share in today's video. I am still exploring fabric manipulation techniques, so if you know a good fabric manipulation technique that I did not mention in this video, leave it in the comment section down below. Thank you for joining me today. I will see you next time. Bye!